Hello, Dallisa Hocking here. I'm the host of Spirit and Spark TV. I am delighted to bring you a new episode of Famous and Fated. I'm going to be joined by Benjamin Bernstein in just a moment. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. This channel is great for predictions, astrology, and really all things spiritual. So if you like us, give us a thumbs up on this video and make sure that you subscribe. This video, Famous and Fated, is really about taking a look and interpreting a natal astrology chart of someone that everyone knows. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide the identity at first, and we're going to walk you through a few of the things that are going on inside of this chart. We're going to allow you an opportunity to guess who you think it is, and then we'll reveal it. It is a fascinating person, so make sure you stay tuned throughout the entire episode. Now, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about today's astrologer, Benjamin Bernstein. He is known as the Astro Shaman. I've collaborated with him on a few projects. He's fantastic. I've had readings with him. You have to make sure you check out his website as well. He has written an Amazon #1 best-selling book, Instant Divine Assistant, your complete guide to fast and easy spiritual awakening, healing, and more. I've read it. It's a great book. I'll include the link in the description of this video, so make sure you check it out. He actually hosts 2 podcasts. I don't know where he finds time to sleep and eat, but the podcasts are called Awaken, Heal, and Thrive, and the award-winning This Week in Astrology podcast. So make sure you subscribe to both of those. He also runs the Awakening Plus online membership, which helps its members awaken, heal, and thrive. Listen, he's got awards, he's won accolades, he's done over 10,000 sessions, he has clients all over the world, and he's been doing his own spiritual practice for 45 plus years. So when I tell you, he's the real deal, he's the real deal. His greatest joy is helping others with free instant divine assistance, also known as IDAs. They're techniques that help with spiritual awakening, healing, making it fast and easy. Like I said, his book really walks you through it, so I'll include that link below. And let's go ahead without further ado and get started. So let me bring Benjamin up here on the screen. So go ahead and say hello.
Hello.
Yeah, are you excited to walk through this? I know you shared with me before that you've done these kinds of interpretations with famous charts in the past. And so I'm sure you have a lot to share about this. So do you want to go ahead and pull up the chart and let's get started?
Absolutely. So let me share the screen here. So here is the horoscope. We have artfully blocked all the data in the upper left corner. So what Dallisa says I can tell you about this chart so far is this is a writer, and widely, I can guarantee you've heard of this person. And this person is also universally regarded as a genius. And they're, it's a he. So what I'm going to do first is talk about why this person's chart supports this writer and how the genius is supported. So obviously in writing, the first archetype we think of is the third archetype, which is Mercury and Gemini. So let's just start with Mercury. For starters, here's Mercury right at the top in the first degree of Taurus. So first off, we see Mercury is the most elevated planet in the chart. And the planet that is at the highest point usually has special prominence and power. So right away, we got an elevated Mercury. Also, where is it located? In the 10th house. In astrology, the 10th house is the house of career reputation. So if you got Mercury in your career house, that's a good sign you could be a writer. Beyond that, let's look at the midheaven. So the beginning of the 10th house has clues about one's career reputation. That's Pisces. And one of the meanings of Pisces is inspired creativity. And anyone who knows this man's work would have to agree the work is full of inspired creativity. Next, let's look at the aspects that Mercury makes. So I'm going to assume that some people here don't know much about astrology, so I'll explain even basic things. So all these crazy colored lines in the middle are called aspects, and they're all the energetic connections the planets and points make to each other. And I use so many of them that it's a real mess in mine. However, we've got a cheat sheet over here on the left. This big old triangular grid is called an aspect grid. And with it, we can trace Mercury and say, okay, what are the quick and easy ways we can see what Mercury's up to? So let's just kind of run them down. Mercury is connecting to the moon, which is emotions, and that little turquoise Q is a quintile, which is the aspect of magical inspiration. For example, the chart of Mozart has a ton of these in there, and he's widely regarded as a musical genius. This guy is a genius too. So this says his writing, Mercury, has a magical way of moving people's emotions, the moon. And in a famous person's chart, the moon can also represent the public. So here's the writing magically connecting with a larger public. Okay. Then next, Mercury is connecting to Venus, and it's a sextile, which is a energizing and harmonious aspect, 60 degrees. And what's Venus? Creativity. So creative writer. That's kind of a no-brainer there. And his writing is full of creativity. Mercury next, we have a quintile to Mars. And one of the things I can tell you also, this man was incredibly prolific. He wrote a ton of stuff. Okay. So Mars is energy and drive and just getting it done. So Mars quintile Mercury says, I have just a ton of energy and inspiration to do my writing. Okay. Then Mercury squares Jupiter. Jupiter, among other rings, is publication. Okay. And of course, his work was published and is still widely published today. So when you get writing and publishing put together with a strong energizing connection like a square, that's a good thing too. Mercury then squares Saturn. Now, to write as much as this guy did requires tremendous discipline. And the writing is full of such wisdom and, profundity that, Saturn is the wise elder also. So that kind of makes sense. I want to take a little tangent and note that Saturn and Jupiter are over here and they're together. Okay. And every 20 years, Jupiter and Saturn make a conjunction in the sky. Back before the ancients knew about anything beyond Saturn, this was like the biggest deal astrologers could ever see. Every 20 years, we have what's called the Great Conjunction. Okay. And so when a person has Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in their chart, they're considered to be a great one. And there it says the person with this conjunction may be a person whose work is great and makes a big impact. And in this case, not only does he have the Great Conjunction, he has it right at the beginning of his first house, right at the point of where everyone sees you, the point of greatest visibility. So it's just amazing that the Great Conjunction is in the first house. And to make matters even more interesting, because of where this guy was born, his midheaven and IC is tilted over. So if we look carefully, all the angles, the 4 power points of the chart, the beginnings of houses 1, 4, 7, and 10, are all in the late 20s, 26 and 28. And Jupiter and Saturn are 28 and 2, which means this Great Conjunction is connecting to all 4 angles of the chart. And as if having a Great Conjunction on the ascendant wasn't enough, it's connecting to the midheaven too, the career point. And all this creates a beautiful mystic rectangle, this big blue rectangle I'm tracing here. So this is one of the most potent Great Conjunctions I've ever seen. And when you finally find out who this person is, you'll understand why this person is so well known. Okay. So back from the tangent and back to Mercury. Mercury is semi-square Pluto. So Pluto is over here. Pluto is power. Okay. And Pluto is, just tremendous potency and wealth and power kind of energy. So it really juices up his writing. It doesn't hurt that Pluto is in Pisces, the sign of divine inspiration. So here's this incredible power loaded up with divine inspiration connecting to his Mercury. So as we can see, this Mercury is incredibly well aspected. As if that wasn't enough, we keep tracing Mercury. It connects to the lunar nodes. So these horseshoes here, these black horseshoes, are making Mercury make soft aspects to them, a trine and a sextile. So not only is he supercharged as a writer, it's tied into his life purpose. The lunar nodes are the axis of destiny or life purpose, and the connection is harmonious and smooth. So it's easy for him to move into this. And as a slight tangent off this, the south node is Gemini, the north node is Sagittarius. So the point where he's coming from at the beginning of the incarnation has writing already in it, Gemini, and it's moving toward Sagittarius, publication. So, oh my God, it just doesn't stop. Okay. So that's the Mercury aspect. So that alone would be extraordinarily enough evidence to say this person should be a writer. Now, as a tangent, back when this person was writing, we didn't have modern technology. We didn't have video and audio and stuff like that. But in this day and age, if you've got a powerful Mercury or a powerful Gemini setup, That just means communication. Back in his day, you either did it in person or you did it through the written page. But these days, it could be communicating in any way, shape, or form.
That
Okay,
is a
so
big hint. And I'm hoping that the guesses are starting to come in. So
yeah.
make sure everybody drops it in the comments of the video.
Okay. Now, so that's and if this wasn't enough, this Mercury is part of another. I pointed out the aspect pattern with the great conjunction with Jupiter and Saturn, but Mercury also forms a little pattern called a T-square. Now I know this is really messy, but if you focus carefully, here's Mercury at the top, and on the left we've got the ascendant at the beginning of house 1, Jupiter and Saturn, and on the right we've got the descendant. So this forms, in geometry, it would be called a right triangle, and in astrology we call this a T-square. So Mercury, as if it weren't enough that it's in the career house and at the top of the chart, it itself is strongly connected to the ascendant where you meet this person. And as I said already, connecting to Saturn and Jupiter. So very powerful aspects to these critical points as well, forming this beautiful pattern that gives it just extra juice. The descendant, the relational house, is not quite so important in my interpretation, but any connection to an angle is a charge up.
I was going to ask you that, Benjamin, because I see Chiron there on the descendant, and I wasn't sure if you placed any kind of importance on the interpretation, but it sounds like the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the ascendant may be more important in looking at the interpretation. Would that be correct?
That's my interpretation. Now, Chiron is not one of his more prominent planets. I mean, in his writing, he definitely deals with the themes of wounding and trauma and healing, for sure. But in terms of my technical definition of what's a T-square, Chiron is over, it's 8 or 9 degrees off the square to Mercury, and it barely connects to Jupiter, if at all. Okay. So it's just so far away that I'm going to call that a very loose. And when you're in an aspect pattern, you got one planet that's kind of a distant cousin in terms of distance away, it tends to be less important.
Okay.
So good question, though. Okay, so then let's look at, so we're on writing, but more broadly, this person was very creative. His creating came out mainly through writing, but not exclusively. He was also an actor, interestingly. But let's look at his Venus and see what that's doing. Okay, Venus is the planet of just creativity general. The artist is one of his interpretations, and it's in Gemini. So, of course, if your creative planet is in Gemini, then the odds of doing it through writing become more likely. And this also brings out another subtlety called a mutual reception. And in a mutual reception, 2 planets are in each other's signs. It's like the old Reese's peanut butter cup. You got chocolate in my peanut butter. You got peanut butter in my chocolate. Let's put them together, okay? So Mercury rules Gemini and Venus rules Taurus, and here they are in each other's signs, okay? Because if that wasn't enough, they make as I mentioned earlier, they actually make a sextile to each other. So Mercury and Venus are like totally tied together. They make an aspect. They're in each other's signs. They're the whole writing thing and the whole creativity thing are supercharging each other the way this chart is set up. So Venus also is conjoined the South Node, which itself is in Gemini, as I mentioned. So just to briefly cover these guys, the South Node is what you brought in. It's both the talents and gifts you brought into the lifetime, as well as the traumas and stuff you came to heal from prior lives. And then the North Node is like the discomfort zone you're moving toward to get better at. So when you've got Venus and Gemini, creativity and writing conjunct which the South Node, what I brought in, that lets us know this wasn't his first rodeo as a creative artist. He was a writer before, who knows what his past lives were, but it's all really potently energized by the South Node sign and conjunction to Venus. And to put it all to boot, it's in the 12th house, which is the house of inspired creativity. So it's just amazing, okay? And so we've got a sense of what that's about. And then the Venus and South Node itself are part of another aspect pattern called a grand cross, a big old geometrical square. So it's Venus in the South Node, and then the midheaven up here, and then the North Node over here, and then the 4th house cusp here. Now, granted, it's all, except for Venus, is all virtual points. But, to have this potent setup connecting to the midheaven especially lets us know all this juice around writing and creativity is supposed to come out and be expressed in your career or your reputation.
Interesting.
So,
yeah. Can I ask you a question
Sure.
regarding your interpretation of this? I'm just noticing We've got Jupiter and Saturn, looks like just under the horizon line. But if I'm
Hmm.
looking, it appears that a lot of the major planets are above the horizon line. So, in your
Oh yeah.
interpretation, Benjamin, would this indicate that this person, as they're born natally looking at this chart, that they are meant to be more public facing, have more of a public reputation?
Absolutely. The fact that every personal planet is above the horizon and so many other things are too. That's a more, yeah, you're exactly right. The upper half, broadly speaking, is more public. The lower half, broadly speaking, is more private. So yeah, this guy was meant for prominence for sure. And interesting, yeah. But there's a mixture though. I mean, with a 12th house with Venus and Mars, there he needs a certain amount of isolation and private time to do his creativity and meditate and get his inspiration and stuff. But yeah, the prominent placement in more public facing houses, especially of Mercury and the Sun, are very prominent for public recognition.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because even we're going to reveal it here in a moment who this is and talk a little bit more about this person. But I think as everyone's watching this, they're hearing the things that you are interpreting and even thinking, hopefully, about their own natal chart and how things show up in theirs, and not to compare myself to this person. But I have a Saturn Jupiter conjunction
Mm,
in my chart, not in the first
yeah.
house, but and I had no idea that that was part of the interpretation of those two planets being together. And then someone looking and seeing, are a lot of my planets above the horizon line, below the
Hmm.
horizon line? So there's so many pieces to a natal birth chart, and that's why, if you've never had a chart done by a professional astrologer, if you haven't had it done recently, I definitely recommend Benjamin. Um, and it's something worth doing. I get my chart done regularly.
Yeah, and what, she's just talking about natal stuff, but I actually looked at his transits over the course of his writing life too and saw how that was lit up. We may not have time to get into that, but even if you've understood your natal chart pretty well, the planets are always moving, and an annual update where you get just, what's going on this year? What are the big themes now? What are the timings that I should be, watching out for possible challenges, or when are the times when should put the pedal to the metal because I got huge opportunity in alignment. Yeah, those are things that looking at your moving energies regularly can help too.
Absolutely. Do you think that we should reveal who it is and then continue the conversation?
Sure.
Should Okay, let's give everybody a moment. So I
All right.
want them to either comment, if you're watching this as the live premiere, comment in the chat box. If you're catching the replay, awesome. I want you to drop your guess in the comments of this video. We'll give you a moment to type it out. And as they type in their answer, is there one more quick thing that you want to mention before we do the reveal?
Well, I still haven't talked about the genius aspects.
Oh, okay. Let's
Um,
do that while we get the
should
comments coming in.
Okay. Yeah. So the energy associated with genius is the sign Aquarius and the planet Uranus are the other genius indicators. So he has the planet Uranus here, quintile the moon, another of those amazing quintiles. So he has lots of these magical creativity aspects in the chart, and the moon itself is in Aquarius. So you have to understand, you in astrology, you can get to the same archetype through a planet, a sign, or a house. So to have an Aquarian moon quintile Uranus has, moon is kind of like your natural things you bring in instinctively. So just tremendous genius just instinctively for him. Okay. And again, since the moon in a famous person's chart like this is the public, then genius that reaches the public would be a nice way to think about this. Almost an instinctive genius, because the moon is kind of what you're naturally inclined to do. As if that wasn't enough, Uranus trines Jupiter. Okay. Now I'm going to go a level deeper with Jupiter here. I talked about Jupiter as publication, but Jupiter is also one of the ruling planets of his career and reputation. Again, he's got a Pisces midheaven, and this is one of those signs that has two rulers. The old ruler is Jupiter, and when they eventually discovered Neptune and also assigned rulership of Pisces to Neptune, so we've got two rulers of of Pisces. So Jupiter is connecting to Uranus, so genius going to not just publication, but to career and reputation. And the trine means easy, automatic genius coming to what he's doing for a living and what he's known for. As if that wasn't enough career boosting, Uranus is also right across from Neptune, the other ruler of Pisces, the sign ruling his career and reputation. So that's even stronger. Uranus pretty tightly right across from Neptune, career ruler, the genius coming out, as if it's kind of a double boost. I've got the genius planet connecting to both ruling planets of his career and reputation. So that's pretty strong.
Okay.
So those are some of the genius indicators I saw.
Yeah, those are profound for sure. So I think it's safe to go ahead and reveal who this is. We're going to show the birth information up in the left-hand corner. If you would like to stop your screen share, I will briefly just bring up the Wikipedia page, and then we'll go back to the chart. So drum roll, please. Let's see who got it right. Let's see. Ta-da! William Shakespeare. So everyone probably has seen this picture of him. You can certainly go online to the Wikipedia page and check out more information. I've got a couple questions I'm going to ask Benjamin about William Shakespeare here in just a moment, but obviously a very interesting life, well known for different writings that he's done. I feel like he was well before his time, but now that we've revealed that it's William Shakespeare, I will go ahead and have you pull his chart back up, and we can show the birth information. And we'll just talk a little bit more about William Shakespeare and the genius that he was. And so I figured if we showed it was May 3rd, 1564, we were giving everybody a little too much of a clue. That's why we hid that from you. But if you got it right, give us a little shout out. Or if you thought that it could be William Shakespeare, we'd love to hear that in the comments. So a couple of questions that I have, and we talked about this backstage. We have this natal chart of William Shakespeare, and we know that since 1564, there have been many other iterations of his work, people making plays and movies and writing books and talking about the characters that he created. So my question for you, Benjamin, on this is, obviously, William Shakespeare is no longer with us on Earth, unless he's incarnated somewhere. But this natal chart, throughout all of the years since his passing, is it possible to look at the transits that are happening, the planets that are moving, comparing it to his natal birth chart, and get an indication that his work becomes more popular? Or maybe when a movie premiere, Romeo and Juliet, comes out, could you look at his chart and his transits and see that his chart, even though he's no longer William Shakespeare alive today, is being activated?
Absolutely. And back, this takes me so back to my apprenticeship with Kelly Lee Phipps when I was just learning astrology. We did over 100 celebrity charts. We did a big one every week for an hour. So this is like revisiting the past for me doing this. But we would always look at the key transits and the key moments of a person's life. And in many cases, we were working with a deceased person, and we looked, like if a big movie was made off of one of their works or something, sure enough, there would be an outer planet transit that was lighting that up. So usually it was what I found not only in famous people having, now with Shakespeare, it's kind of different because he's so pervasive. You can hardly have a year or two go by without another movie coming out or another TV adaptation. So he's just so pervasive that he's just almost a constant, So this might be more true for a slightly lesser known person because he's just ubiquitous. But what usually happens is you have a slow planet, usually Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, who makes a quadrature aspect to a sensitive point. So they're going to come on to something that's relevant. For example, it might hit a Mercury or it might hit a Venus in this case, and it might be on top of it or right across from it or making a square to it. And those are usually the times when you see a deceased person's work coming to prominence. And depending on what the nature of the deceased person's work is, their ideas or their work being revitalized, usually you'll be on a point that is directly relevant to the kind of work they did or is relevant to their midheaven or one of its rulers. So that's what I usually see in terms of a person coming back to fame after being deceased.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know we could talk about this all day. I do have one more question. because there are so many instances where his work keeps coming back around,
Mm-hmm.
and different movie directors and authors, and there's even been speculation at some point that people have questioned, did William Shakespeare write everything that his name is on? And so I guess my question would be around collaborations, or people working with him or him with others. Is there anything that you see in his chart that would stand out in regards to his work or collaborating with other people?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's super clear. But let me first say, remember, much of his work was plays, and he was an actor as well. So a tremendous amount of his work had to involve collaboration because he was involved with the plays that were being made of his work. So his poetry and sonnets and things were, solo efforts, but the work he's best known for was all collaborative by its very nature. Okay. So you would expect to see a collaborative energy. And the most blatant example is, here's his descendant, other people important in his life, with Capricorn on the cusp, ruled by Saturn. And where's Saturn? The first thing up in his first house, the house of him. So the planet that rules, relations with other people is right up in the house of him individually. So the seventh house ruler first up in the first house is a blatant indicator that he's going to be doing collaborative work. Or at least, again, I have to backtrack slightly and say astrology is archetypally predictive, not concretely predictive. This is highly suggestive that he would be involved in strong relationships of various kinds. And because Capricorn and Saturn have to do with work and productivity, these, of course, the plays and things were working relationships. There may have been personal energy too, but Capricorn and Saturn tend to love to get stuff done and be productive and not just, hang out for no reason.
Interesting. We could sit here and talk about William Shakespeare for hours, I'm sure. I'd love to hear everybody watch this video. What is standing out to you the most when you listen to what Benjamin is saying about the chart, or maybe you even know astrology and you're looking at this chart and something is standing out to you? We would love to hear it in the comments, so drop it on this video. Benjamin, is there anything else you want to add about this chart before we close out?
I've covered most of the main stuff. There's one subtle thing I noticed. He's even energized by declination. Okay. So what the chart is, it shows, if you think of a horizontal plane, the planet's connecting, but this chart and most astrology work doesn't involve how high or low the planet is above the horizon, the declination point. And it so happens that his Venus and Mars are conjoined by, they're called parallel. They are within 1 degree of each other. They're both out of bounds too. And if you want to get into subtler aspects of interpretation, an out of bounds planet tends to get special prominence. And it's usually energized in some way. They're both way above where they normally are, 24 and 25 degrees of declination. And because they're within 1 degree of each other, they're considered conjunct by what's called parallel. And when Venus and Mars come together, what happens? It's a creativity booster. Venus is creativity, Mars energizes it. And so when you see people with a strong Venus Mars connection, now it's not so obvious if you just look here because there's no aspect normally, but they are connecting in this subtler way. And so that just adds yet another touch of energy to his creativity. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like he really lived and breathed creative genius. And it makes sense why all of these years later that he's still part of conversations regularly. Lasting power for sure, for sure. Well, I mentioned earlier at the top of the show that you've written Amazon #1 bestseller. I've read it. It's amazing. I've included that link in the description below. But where can people find you, find out about your work, book an astrology session? Give us your website address and where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, just go to astroshaman.com is really the best place. And everything I do links from there, my book, my podcast, my membership, my individual one-on-one services. It's all accessible from astroshaman.com. So just go there. And I'm also on, you can search Benjamin Bernstein on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn are the main places I'm hanging out right now.
Okay, beautiful. And I'll go ahead and have you stop screen sharing and I'll say goodbye to everyone. Benjamin, Bernstein, the Astro Shaman, as you mentioned, astroshaman.com. Make sure you go and check that out. Request your session with Benjamin today. We'll be back with another episode of Famous and Fated. So make sure you've hit that subscribe button here on the YouTube channel and given this video a thumbs up. If you enjoyed it, please share it with a few folks in your inner circle and encourage them to join the conversation as well. And for more information on my work and my company, go to SpiritAndSpark.com and make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and right here on YouTube. Okay, everybody, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.